Hello, this is Sam Gerrans from truthinthenews.info. Today is Tuesday, the 26th of April 2022, and we're going to grind our way through another episode of the world's most boring game, otherwise known as Propaganda Bingo. If you haven't played before, it's very straightforward. There are basically 8 different mechanisms for propaganda. I'll quickly walk you through them. And the first one is this. It's unrelated items.
Hello, how are you doing?
Yeah, if you've ever had one of those calls first, in the daytime, somebody trying to insinuate themselves into your life, trying to make some link between themselves and what they want to give you and what's going on in your life. You've experienced unrelated items. This is a standard use in propaganda. You'll get used to that one. Opinion leaders.
Just tell me exactly what to do and how to do it.
An opinion leader is basically somebody who tells you exactly what to do and how to do it. Somebody who knows better than you do. That'll be pretty much anybody out there in propaganda world. They often are professors or economists, but they can be unnamed people such as diplomats or experts. Missing context. This is Maria Gonzalez. Maria Gonzalez has just discovered that she's managed to crack her boyfriend Juan's telephone and discovered what he's been up to all the time. There'll always be a lot of missing context. If you know anything about anything, or you have a memory, or even if you have both, you know something about something and you have a memory, then you'll realize there's tons of missing context. But probably if you've been eating the food and taking the injections, you won't have either, so it won't matter. The next one is obfuscation and simulation.
Add me as a friend.
This is Zoe. Zoe's going to pretend to be she might be your girlfriend, but she's never going to be your girlfriend. Not really. But she'll keep keep the plates spinning there. And her job is, journalist's job, and I use that word with the full force of contempt that it now deserves. Their job is, and I'm talking about mainstream journalists here. There are some non-mainstream journalists. None of this applies to them. I'm talking about mainstream journalists who now, their job is to pretend to be journalists, and they have to keep that pretense up because they're not real journalists. They're just really prostitutes for deep state. Next one is gaslighting. Gaslighting is about assumed conclusions, and I expect we'll get into some of that. The next one is shaming language and insults.
Oh, you're a very bad man.
Thank you, Julie. That's Julie Garland there. And these will be implied insults or inferences left hanging that anybody who is for or against the proposition that's been ground out into what remains of your mind. If you're on the wrong side of that line, then you're just bad, and there's nothing to be done. You can be called a name. It'll usually end in "ite o Borist." The next one is lie or demonization.
They took the babies out of the incubators. Took the incubators and left the children to die on the cold floor.
Okay, this was testimony presented to the American, I can't remember, Senate or Congress or something or other, to form some of the justification for the invasion of Iraq and murder and ongoing death and destruction in that country. This was a complete lie, okay? These are easy to spot. If you have a memory or you know anything, you'll be able to spot some of these. And demonization. And the last one is propaganda payload. This is really like a missile has a payload. It's the thing, like a cruise missile can be used to deliver all kinds of different stuff. Propaganda is designed to have a payload. It's the moral. It's the thing that they want to get into your nervous system.
Scuttle, look what we found.
Okay, so those are the basic components of propaganda, and if you'll find that this applies also to things like so-called entertainment, even education, laughingly called now. If you've probably noticed, if most of the really bright people have left all of those, the mainstream, because there's nothing to do there. If you're not just interested in grinding out the wokeism or whatever new propaganda item it is, whether it's in academia or education or entertainment or journalism, whatever, all the smart people have left. If you've noticed, like, the bright people are not even going to university as students anymore, let alone teaching this, because there's no point. They've worked it out. It's idiotic to go. Anyway, we're going to look at this article. It's from The Guardian. I was sent this. Please don't send me your favourite articles, but I was sent this one, and I thought, yeah, okay, I'll do this. I have briefly skimmed it. I haven't read it at all, but I know how long it is. That's all I know. So other than that, I know nothing. So we're going to be reading this together. But this is from The Guardian in italics. Again, I tend to concentrate on The Guardian and The Independent because they're designed for supposedly intelligent people. Whereas if I hit the Daily Mail and the Sun, people could say, oh, well, this is for morons. So this is for people who've got degrees, think they're intelligent and all of that. Also, it's got no paywall, but it doesn't make any difference because they're all exactly the same. Anyway, let's just go through this so-called article. The awful truth. Hold on. First of all, when did this happen? This is recent. Yeah, 24th. What's it today? 26th. So, yeah, it's a very recent article. The awful truth is dawning. Putin may win in Ukraine. The result would be catastrophe. A Russian victory would herald a new age of instability, economic fragmentation, hunger for millions, and social unrest. Well, this is a load of missing context. If you would like some of that context, you can get it very easily. Just look up John Mearsheimer, who's an academic. I've been corrected. It's not Harvard. I think it's Chicago, if that person who said that in the comments is correct. Anyway, one of those standard American universities. He's anything but a Putin shill. He's just somebody who reads books and thinks quite a lot. I mean, within a preset range, but he certainly can think. And he has a presentation out there from 2015, which will explain to you all the backstory to this. So that this is entirely the result of America and NATO's refusing to listen to Russia's extremely patient and reasonable requests vis-a-vis its own security. So whose fault is that? I certainly agree that a Russian victory is coming. I think certainly up until the point that happens, and possibly even after that, there will be a new age of instability, economic fragmentation, hunger for millions, and social unrest, as the perspicacious writer has identified, but not for the reasons he gives. My view, this is nothing to do with propaganda one way or another. I'm just giving you my view. My view is that this is COVID 2.0. It's just continuation of the same takedown process. But being unwashed masses, and me, I mean, we're all in the same group, we're not expected to understand any of this. We're living through, as the late and very great Alan Watt, with no S, from Cutting Through the Matrix, used to say, we're living through a business plan. And was he ever right? We are living through a business plan. And the people at the top of this business plan, and I'm not talking people that we generally see, but the actual planners, they think that you're morons. All of us, they think we're too stupid to understand this plan. And if we were capable of understanding it, that would be one thing. But the fact that we're not really just, and certainly not going to do anything about it, is testimony to the fact that we deserve what we get, and that they should be out. They are our betters and can do with us what they will. Anyway, usually what happens at this point is people start shouting,
Oh, you're a very bad man.
Yes, I think that particular epithet ends in "ist," conspiracy theorist. So that's what they'll say to try and shut you up. But anyway, I don't care. Let's move on. The contrast was startling. In New York, Antonio Guterres, the UN Secretary General, launched a belated, desperately needed initiative to halt the war in Ukraine. Time for that. Antonio Guterres was when the Minsk Accords were signed, which sorted all of this out. But he didn't do that. Instead, they supported, well, certainly NATO did, Ukraine, while it reneged on its stated signed commitments to Russia, and NATO pushed this war through. So that's just if you have a memory. You don't need to be told that, but that's the case. So let's just continue. At this time of great peril and consequence, he, Guterres, would like to discuss urgent steps to bring about peace, his spokesman said. The UN chief, he revealed, was proposing immediate in-person talks with Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky in Kiev. I mean, just to put this into some perspective, I do think that part of the point of this whole process is to bring in the New World Order, myself. And I think that either the United Nations or something like it is going to be at the centre of that. And that process is what we're living through, that pageant, that drama. Well, what's for sure is Volodymyr Zelensky. He is nothing but a sort of bit player in this, and at some point there is going to be an agreement between Putin and whoever is at the top of Ukraine, or left at the top of whatever's left of Ukraine. But Zelensky is not an equal partner in this. In my view, this is just my view, I think he's been kept alive because they need somebody to sign the capitulation agreement. That's it. I mean, in terms of propaganda, this comedian has been built up into some sort of great leader. He's a cokehead, if you don't know. He's a cokehead, corrupt puppet. That's it. That's the most you can really say of him. I don't know how long he will, how long his usefulness will continue, but we'll see. Let's continue. At roughly the same time as this hopeful development unfolded, the UK's Boris Johnson, riding a Partygate getaway plane to India, was colourfully rubbishing peace efforts. Okay, this is just... We have some general genres in propaganda and news. The thing you have to understand about news is the longest running soap opera in the world. It's a soap opera. I mean, if you don't watch it, you don't know who the main characters are. You don't know, who likes who hates who. But it's show business for ugly people, as it's been called. I think that it's, politics is that. It's a drama. It's a sort of virtual reality show. And this is part of the method, because the medium is the message. What they're doing is they're getting you, especially if you live in the West, basically have thought of big stuff that can kill you as something you watch on TV or read in the newspaper. It's never ever going to really affect you personally, because you can just turn it off and go and get a cafe latte and just have a laugh with your friends about those country X, blah blah blah, and then forget all about it. But what's going on now is that this is coming to you. I mean, whether you like it or not, it's already there. Your civilization, Western civilization, has been taken down, so bit by bit. But now what's happening is that you're supporting Nazism, and they had to develop a way of teaching you that you're wrong and that you're bad. And I think that this is the way that they're doing it. And because you have no morals, if you are a Western, you have no morals. There's nothing you won't bend over for. And that's been proven. There's no, I'm not guessing here. I just look around, sodomy and homosexuality, that's all fine. Borderline paedophilia in schools, that's all fine. There's nothing that you won't, the morals are so malleable and porous that it's already been demonstrated that you have no moral compass, no catechism, nothing, okay? So what does it take to show you that you're bad people, really bad people? It takes supporting Nazism. And that's really what's happening, okay? And I think that my view is that the Russians are just collecting all this information. That's why I do believe most of what comes out of the official Russian organs, because they are not just fighting a war that they're winning objectively. They are collecting evidence against you. And there's going to be a court process, a new Nuremberg process of some kind. I don't know what form it's going to take, where all of this evidence is going to be presented. The biolabs in Ukraine, these are facts. These are just facts. They're really there. Well, I don't know if they certainly were there. Nazism, Western support for Nazism. So now the West, in the person of NATO, which is really, I suppose, just the modern iteration of what's left of Christendom, is shown to be the baddies. As I've said before, and I do keep repeating myself on this channel because there's nothing else I can really do. It just go round and round and round. What's going on in Ukraine is it's the last battle of World War II, plus it's the defeat of NATO, plus it's really the watershed to the New World Order. So anyway, I'm sure lots of people have dropped off by this point, so we'll just carry on with whoever's remaining. Rubbishing peace efforts, Partygate and Boris Johnson. Yeah, Boris Johnson. I kind of stopped learning their names, the prime ministers of the United Kingdom, because there wasn't any point. But I do know who Boris Johnson is. He's actually a bright guy. I mean, he's got a very good education, certainly better than anything any of us have got. But he's playing a role, and He understands what that role is. I would say he's perfectly aware of what his role is, unlike, most journalists who don't really understand it, although a few do, I think. But, this idea that Partygate, and then you've got, what else is that like distraction? The Johnny Depp thing, and, rather than, of course, watching Ghislaine Maxwell, you managed... It doesn't really matter what you think, because your opinion doesn't count, whilst at the same time you're being told that democracy is wonderful and anywhere it doesn't have it deserves to be bombed into the Stone Age. They know you can't keep up with all of this, and you're not meant to. And this is, they're using weapons of mass distraction, as Tony Blair correctly called it, in order to carpet bomb you emotionally, to keep you so that you don't really follow any of it. And anyway, you're not meant to. You're being ruled. But this, I'm just sort of explaining how one part of this works. Anyway, let's just get on with it. Putin, he claimed, was an untrustworthy reptile. Oh, okay. Reptile, is that what he said? I really don't see how the Ukrainians can easily sit down and come to some kind of accommodation. How can you negotiate with a crocodile when it's got your jaw in it's got your leg in its jaws? Johnson asked. Well, I mean, let's leave the insults to one side. Russia has been pushing for and actually got an accommodation. It's called the Minsk Accord, but I don't know that we're going to hear about it in any of this anyway. So that's lots of missing context. I suppose it's shaming. It is shaming, insults, and all of that. It's also a lie, and it's gaslighting. And it's also this, isn't it? Because it's you've got an opinion leader who's Johnson. Anyway, let's carry on. This gaping disconnect is doubly disturbing. It's quite an interesting alliteration. I'd say this about these writers, these journalists, is that they're frustrated writers. Okay, this gaping disconnect is doubly disturbing. Anyway, who cares? It suggests a lack of coordination between the UN chief and a permanent member of the UN Security Council on how best to proceed. Well, no, it doesn't suggest that. What it suggests is that you're completely missing out all of that context. And because you think, the journalist here, insofar as he thinks about these things, that you're too stupid. He's not doing his job. His job is this: obfuscation and simulation.
Add me as a friend.
He's got to keep you thinking that he's doing his job, that he's presenting the facts, and here they are. But the facts you can get in an hour and 15 minutes by watching John Mearsheimer's presentation. Or just look up Scott Ritter on YouTube and then sort the results by upload date. Or just look up Colonel Doug McGregor on YouTube, and again sort the results by upload date, and then you'll know more than this guy can ever tell you about the actual situation. But this is the Guardian in italics for intelligent people who know about important things and who like Beaujolais and can stand around and talk about things and know how to tie a Windsor knot. These sorts of people, they read it. Well, maybe they're not a Windsor knot. No, maybe that'd be Telegraph. But they think they're intelligent. These poor saps. Anyway, let's carry on with it. It also highlights a wider problem, diverging, sometimes opposing, occasionally self-serving approaches to the crisis by Western leaders who have hitherto trumpeted their unity of purpose. Do you see what this is? This is narrative creation. All right, there are basically two ways of looking at this. One is what you might call the analyst's view, and there are some excellent analysts out there, and I'm not in any way impugning either their ability as analysts or their sincerity as individuals, not in the slightest. For example, the Duran do a very good presentation, both together and those two chaps individually. I listen to them both. I think they're very interesting. I listen to some Russian analysts of, sort of, and they can be extremely insightful and illuminating on this question. However, that understanding operates within a range, and there's a reason why it has to stay within that range, is because they don't want to be.
Oh, you're a very bad man.
They don't want to be accused of being conspiracy theorists. I know this. I've always known this. I understand this, but they have to justify their findings on the basis of things that they can point to within the public domain. Otherwise, they're just a very bad man. Me, what I see, I use a different type of logic. It's, I'm able to infer rather than using deductive logic. I'm using sort of this process of inference of just looking where the dots go. Okay, we were here the day before yesterday. We're here now. We're tomorrow going to be there. You find that, and we all use this type of logic. You use it to decide whether or not tomorrow is going to happen. This isn't some sort of bizarre type of logic. We use this far more than we use the type of logic that analysts use, although both have a reason and an application, a reason for being in an application. We use it to decide whether or not to get up in the morning. The sun has risen every day, as we know for a fact, for the last 10,000 years at least. It's going to rise tomorrow. Now, we don't know. You can't, on the basis of syllogism, prove that it's going to rise tomorrow. You can't do it. It's not possible. Okay, but we know that probably it will, and in fact we're going to bet that it will. This is all I'm really doing. But an analyst couldn't really do that, not within the strict confines of his profession, or at least he would have to present it as an assessment with a certain number of caveats. Okay, now that doesn't mean that every mad prognostication about the future, they're all equal. You have to judge cases individually, but neither should that mean that any understanding of a thematic that builds up around, that arises from the totality of individual cases, they can all be dismissed on the same basis. But people aren't interested in these kind of distinctions, so let's just carry on with this. Unity of purpose. The outrage in Western countries sparked by Putin's 24 February invasion is starting to fade. Well, I mean, obviously this is missing context. This war didn't begin, even just the war on the 24th of February 2022. It started 8 years ago. 14,000 inhabitants of the Donbass region of Ukraine have been killed by Ukrainian forces. Okay? 50 people were burnt to death in a building in Odessa. They were rounded up, 150 people were rounded up, locked inside a building in Odessa, and the building was set on fire, and a third of them were burnt to death. Okay, this is the backstory. Okay, that this just completely elides because you have no memory and you don't know anything, and that this only works if one or both of these two requirements are in place. And happily for the writer of this tosh, he's unlikely to be proven wrong. And also, I suppose people keep coming back to the media because they think it's going to tell them something, but it's not going to tell you anything. Its job is to give you this obfuscation simulation.
Add me as a friend.
They're there to keep you thinking. They're there to simulate journalism, but this isn't journalism. This is the information equivalent of masturbation. There's nothing here, okay? Nothing. Let's just continue. Blah, blah. Likewise, the burst of optimism that... Okay, sorry, I forgot. We've got two other factors here, which we're... The first is gush, okay, and the second is outrage. Now, we'll always be in one of these two modes because they have no facts and they can't use facts because facts work against their interests. So where were we? The outrage in Western countries sparked by Putin's 24 February invasion is starting to fade. Likewise, the burst of optimism that followed Ukraine's success in repelling the Russian advance around Kiev. Kyiv, if you're a libtard, you have to call it. Okay, this is all. I've discussed this before. All I can do, if I'm repeating myself, is I've got 8 things, on the shelves. That's all you need. I'm just trying to show you how this works. But this is a whole load of missing context. It's actually a complete misunderstanding of how the war's working. Again, it relies upon you not knowing anything about war, and being incapable of learning anything. I think that's really the key point, because I didn't know anything about this either, but I've learned some stuff. If you want to learn some stuff, you can do it too. It's really easy. And I will again link to an excellent interview with Scott Ritter, who is interviewed by somebody who is kind of libtardy, I think, to begin with, and certainly, got all that kind of like slightly what Ed Dutton calls spiteful mutant. He hasn't got it in lots of it, but he's got a bit of it. But it wears off over the course of this interview. You watch him actually respond. He's this chasm of ignorance with which he enters the conversation is filled up with actual facts and logic as he goes through the conversation, listening to Scott Ritter's presentation. And by the end of it, you can see he gets it. It's really it was impressive to me, because I have never seen somebody who kind of falls into that category actually listen. I've never really seen it, so I was very, very impressed. And I'll link to it below because it's worth a watch. Anyway, let's carry on with this. Now, as Moscow begins a huge slow-motion offensive in the east, concern grows that this conflict has no end point and that the enormous economic and human damage that results may be permanent and global. Well, is that not the plan, for goodness sake? Come on. But also, just to, this is a load of missing context. It's kind of form of gaslighting as well. It's obfuscated. It's all, you just press all the buttons all the time, really, with this kind of tosh, can't you? If you want to know what's going on, listen to Putin's speech 23rd, 24th of February, because he lays out what the plan is. So it's not that Russia tried to get Kyiv and failed miserably and then went off to this. That's what you were told. This is a whole narrative that is completely divorced from the facts, that they're telling the children. And now what they're having to do is kind of manage the reality, which is Putin's going to win this. I would imagine that is the plan, but they want to keep it going for a certain amount of time. I don't know, but the fact is that Russia never wanted to take Kyiv. This isn't about territory. It's about what Russia said it was about at the beginning. Demilitarization. You know what a military is, right? Right, getting rid of that. That's one of the key objectives. Denazification. You know what Nazification is. You've heard about Nazis. Well, they're there. That's one of the objectives. And there are a few other objectives. One is, securing Crimea. That's done now. That's part of Russia. It's gone back to where it used to belong. The Donbass region. And now other aims are coming along, only because Ukraine is being told by the West to continue this war. Kherson is, I think, going to become part of Russia. I would say that probably Kharkov is going to. I would say probably the Odessa region will be. I would imagine if this carries on, if Ukraine continues this, that Russia will end up with all of the coast region. And that my guess, I don't know, but my guess is that Ukraine will be a rump state, although some people think that Russia will continue to push on eventually into Kiev. But my guess, I don't know, but my guess is that they'll take all of these kind of blocks all the way down through the south, and these places will just vote. They'll just have referenda to come into Russia, and there are very good reasons why they'll do that, because they can see that Ukraine is done, and it's just going to be a hellhole. And I would imagine that Russia will just, excuse me, hold those places and then wait for the rest of it to kind of capitulate on an ad hoc basis and just take it as far as it goes. Probably there'll be a natural sort of stopping place at some point when you reach the far western Ukraine, places like Lvov, which are where all the hardcore Nazis are. And I guess at that point they'll just draw a line and say to Poland, and yeah, you can have this bit, which will then kind of become part of Europe. And then all of that ideological and military hell will just enter Europe, and you'll have to deal with all of that. I guess that's what I think is likely to happen, but I could be wrong, but that's what it looks like to me. Anyway, let's carry on with this. Johnson supports a free, independent Ukraine. When did that start? But, like other alliance leaders, appears to lack a thought-through long-term plan to achieve it. Right, now this is what I call the greedy and stupid conspiracy. And this is where I really do part ways with analysts, as much as I do respect some of them. Even Doug McGregor he subscribes to this view. And this view goes something like this. The political elites are the people that you see. Clearly, they're morons who could disagree with that, and corrupt and greedy. I don't think anyone would disagree that they're corrupt and greedy. But that's the extent of it. That's the point The pyramid goes no further. That's it. I don't agree with this narrative, and the reason that I don't is because I've seen consistently over my entire life, but also I can read the consistent whittling away of all the institutions, the long march through the institutions that Mazzini talked about, I think it was. If you look up, for example, oh crikey, what's his name? He was I'm afraid I'm blanking on his name. If it comes to me in the course of what's left, I'll say. But he's well known, and I expect people will be able to point to him in the comments. This Russian Yuri Bezmenov. He talked about demoralization. The West has been in a process of demoralization, I should say, probably since about the time of, probably about the turn of the 20th century. So, it's going into the 1900, the lead up to the First World War. But even going back before that, I would say it's probably true. And if you look at the foundations and how they work, there are plans which just keep rolling through. Doesn't matter who you vote for. So I don't agree with the analysts that this is as far as it goes. I see a level of cohesion. I certainly agree that we are, at the level of middle managers, the level of the night managers at McDonald's, these kind of people like this Ursula von der Leyen, whatever her name is, and these other people. But are they really at the top of this? I hope not. They're far too stupid. I think that they're put in. They are players on the pitch, but they're certainly not the managers, and they definitely don't own the league. They're not franchise holders. They are bit players. That's the way I see it. But I understand why the analysts don't touch that. But I feel that I have a responsibility to point these things out. Anyway, let's carry on. Johnson typically is not looking much beyond the present moment. You see, now this is what they've got here, this stupid and greedy narrative, which kind of keeps you focused on the current, on the apparent, rather than on the actual cohesive, ongoing agenda. The UK and NATO, he said, would just, quote, keep going with the strategy, end quote, of imposing sanctions on Russia and supplying weapons to Kiev, i.e., maintaining the status quo, which is what he's been told to do. Johnson supports a free, independent Ukraine. I think we already said that, didn't we? But, like other alliance leaders, no, they're now using the word alliance, just a key word, wouldn't worry about that, appears to lack a thought-through, long-term plan to achieve it. You see, we're going back to the greedy and stupid thing. Again, I don't disagree. They are greedy and probably, I don't think Johnson's stupid, but a lot of them are stupid. Liz Truss is a moron. I don't think she could probably write her own name if she wasn't, told how to do it. But I wouldn't say the same is true of Johnson. Well, I mean, the moron, is that fair? I don't know. But she certainly doesn't have any authority. She looks like somebody who is not really very good at her job. But then it doesn't matter because she doesn't have any authority, I guess. Anyway, what if Ukrainian forces start losing? Aha, here we are. We've reached it. The propaganda payload.
Scuttle, look what we found!
Okay. This is the thing they're trying to tell you, okay? You are morons. They are the management class, the night manager at McDonald's. Their job is to manage what you think of as your brain so that you stay asleep long enough for them to complete the full implementation of the total prison. Okay, that's it. This is all that propaganda is. And I repeat myself because I can't do anything else. This is, for me, so obvious that it doesn't even bear, talking about. But I'm doing this because clearly there's a need for this sort of stuff. So let's carry on. What if Ukrainian forces start losing? What if the country is partitioned or nears collapse? What you mean? What if the thing that they've decided a long time to make sure happens. And let's not forget, what if whatever's left of these Nazis, and they are Nazis, all pour into whatever's left of them in whatever remains of Ukraine, all pour into Europe. And remember, these are women as well, with this ideology. And these poor Western men who can't, and I'm married to an Eastern European woman, so I know that, Eastern Europeans are attractive. They don't suffer from all of this sort of aggression and feminist insanity, or certainly not to the same extent of Western women. Therefore, they are attractive. So what's going to happen then? Let's say Guardian reader Anthony, with his high gush quotient, which can be pointed in any direction. He hasn't got any real analysis or ability to control himself. Let's say his gushometer gets directed in the direction of Olga from Lviv. She's not going to tell him. But let's say, and these women, they don't dress like bag ladies. They're not, they know how to work men. They really know this stuff. Okay, Western Guardian reading incels won't stand a chance. This is like the feminine equivalent of the Panzer Division. This guy's going to end up with 2 or 3 children. Who his then wife is going to be schooling in the tenets of National Socialism as intoned by Bandera, and at the same time, the Ukrainians are going to be like a protected species in the West, whilst the West is being taken down. Can't you see? You're living through a script. This is a narrative. This is an agenda. Anyway. If you can't see, you probably wouldn't have listened this long. So just carry on. Let's finish up. The price of failure, the true cost of a Putin victory, could be staggering. It is potentially unsupportable for fractious Western democracies and poorer countries alike, beset by simultaneous post-pandemic security, energy, food, inflation and climate crises, all of which are created, aren't they? They have to keep this illusion going that you have a choice. That they have to keep playing this, this sort of kind of coincidence theory. That somehow this is just a weird confluence of stuff that's just come together. That you forget that there are, for example, the Club of Rome, in 1974, put together the whole crisis of the environment, to take away all of your stuff. They take away the Georgia Guidestones. Actually, when I was in the States doing my traverse of the United States, I was in Georgia. I went to see them. They really exist. They're definitely there. And all of that, their job is a simulation. They have to make you think that they are journalists. If there was really anything to worry about, they'd tell you all about it. Okay? It's all just happening by chance. Yet out of myopic self-interest over issues such as Russian oil and gas imports, you see, going back to the greedy and selfish narrative, and from fear of wider escalation, Western leaders duck the tough choices that could ensure Ukraine's survival and help mitigate such ills. Mitigate. He's a journalist. He's writing for The Guardian. Of course he's going to use words like mitigate. Okay, how much of this is left? Oh, no. All right, okay. All right, let's just jump through it. The past week furnished a grim glimpse of the future that awaits if Putin is able to continue to wage war with impunity. Do yourself a favour, if you haven't listened to John Mearsheimer's presentation in 2015, just watch just that. And you'll see why you won't need to watch any more of my channel. My hope is to bore people to such an extent that they don't watch it anymore. Okay? Because for me, this is so tedious. And it should be for you. It only appears to have a value if you mistake it as news. It's not news. This is low grade. This is the kind of, if in terms of propaganda, kind of nutrients. This is cardboard. commit more heinous crimes, threaten nuclear and chemical blackmail, and trash the UN Charter. If you'd like to know who trashed the UN Charter, if you think the UN Charter is something worth keeping, well, then the Americans certainly did that when they invaded Iraq and when they destroyed Serbia. The Russians have been very careful to keep completely within the letter of the law of the UN Charter, as Scott Ritter will explain to you if you care. But all of this is shaming language and insults. That's all it is, okay? And relies upon you not knowing anything. Drastically downgrading its growth forecasts due to the conflict. The International Monetary Fund, well, the International Monetary Fund, there you are, that's an opinion leader. But do you know what the International Monetary Fund does to countries? Read a book called The Economic Hitman. That'll give you some indication. Predicted global economic fragmentation, rising debt and social interest. You mean the very things that the International Monetary Fund promotes. David Malpass, you're supposed to be reading this as well. David Malpass, head of the World Bank. Well, here we are, head of the World Bank. I'm sure he knows everything. Said, quote, a human catastrophe, end quote, loomed as an unprecedented estimated 37% rise in food prices caused by war-related disruption to supplies pushed millions into poverty, increased malnutrition, and reduced funding for education and health care for the least well-off. I'm a Guardian reader. This can't be true. I'm going to have to go somewhere and froth for a while. This is the plan. Can't you work this out yet? Okay. More than 5 million people have fled Ukraine in 2 months. What, you mean mass immigration into Europe? You mean that's something we don't want? Well, who wouldn't have thought that, looking at the agenda over the last 40, 50 years? And more will follow, exacerbating an international migration emergency that extends from Afghanistan to the Sahel. In drought-hit East Africa, the World Food Programme says 20 million people may face starvation. Well, clearly the agenda is going to plan. This year, Putin's war did not create the drought. Oh, well, there you are. At least Putin didn't create the drought. But, there's a but coming up. The UN warns it could hurt efforts to reduce global heating, thereby triggering further displacement and forced migration. You're living through a business plan, but you're too stupid to work out what it is. You're meant to kind of like just respond to these triggers and feel in a general sense of despair and fear. The broader negative political impact of the war, should it rage on indefinitely, is almost incalculable. The UN's future as an authoritative global forum, lawmaker and peacekeeper is in jeopardy. You see, they put this forward as though this is some sort of great tragedy, that the United Nations might not, be the world dominant superpower. This is gaslighting, isn't it? I mean, it's all kinds of other stuff as well. As more than 200 former officials warned Guterres last week. At risk, too, is the credibility of the International Court of Justice. That'll be the same Court of Justice which in The Hague that bumped off Milosevic, whose injunction to withdraw was scorned by Putin. Ha 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 ha. Are you evil, Putin?
Yes, comrade.
And the entire system of war crimes prosecutions. You see, Putin's not an idiot. He knows that at the end of this, that they're going to come after him and they'll kill him. And he's right. That's what they will do. Along with all of the leadership of Russia. So the effect of the Western sanctions and all the rest of it has been to make Russia into a more unified country than I've seen in 20 years of living in this country. And I speak the language. I'm not walking around in a bubble. Anyway, let's carry on. In terms of democratic norms, what would they be? I mean, if you believe in democracy, if you genuinely believe that this process has a value, of where you ask everybody to vote for somebody, and everyone's vote is exactly equal, which assumes that their kind of intellectual processes are identical. And then you go through a mathematical process where you make a decision on that basis. If you think that this process has validity, I think it's a joke myself. I think the ancients would have just, they would have just laughed In fact, they knew about democracy and with limited context, and regarded it as the one step away from tyranny. If you read what the Greeks, these much vaunted people, have to say about it, they're very scathing about it. But anyway, who cares about any of these sorts of things? In terms of democratic norms and human rights, the full or partial subjugation, that's a good word, subjugation. Are you subjugating Ukraine?
Yes, comrade.
Would spell disaster for the international rules-based order. Well, actually, he's right on that bit. But do you know what the international rules-based order? Rules-based makes it sound valid, doesn't it? Makes it sound like, this is good. We've got rules. What the international rules-based order is America reinterpreting democracy, whatever we mean by that, as it sees fit, and then bombing various countries as the banking cabal, which owns it and controls it, tells it to do. That's the rules-based order. That's the order that 90% of the world, if we care about numbers, hates. That's what that is. Okay, just so you know. And a triumph for autocrats everywhere. Can't you see what propaganda this is? I'm not asking you to agree with my assessment of Russia and to do what's going on in Ukraine. I'm just saying, can't you see what this is? You can apply what I'm doing here to absolutely everything, and you should. And that's what Soviet citizens did. That's why this channel is called Truth in the News, because we had two newspapers, main ones, Pravda, the truth, and Izvestia, news. And the joke was there's no truth in the news and there's no news in the truth. And everybody understood this. But in the West, people still read this tosh and take it seriously. I can't for the life of me imagine why. Okay, let's continue. What message would it send, for example, to China over Taiwan, or indeed to Putin as he covets the vulnerable Baltic republics? How do you know what Putin covets? What Putin has coveted, if you want to use that rather sort of technical, biblical term, I think he's made very clear, is that, and has been clear since day one, which is no more expansion of NATO, don't point your nukes at our country. Is that such an unreasonable request? I don't know, you decide. I mean, anyway, let's carry on with this. Islamic terrorists who now furtively plot. Can't you see this is what they're doing? I mean, plot. Okay, that's it's not plan, but it's plot. Okay, so it has a sort of negative connotation. But they're not only plotting; they're furtively plotting. You have to be aware of language. Furtively plot to exploit the West's Ukraine distraction, would relish such a victory for violence. Well, the West has poured a load of these people into Ukraine. You do know that, right? And given them tons of weapons, a lot of which can down airplanes, including civilian airplanes. Okay. This is what your governments are doing for you. Failure to stop the war, rescue Ukraine, and punish Russia's rogue regime. He's got this alliteration problem, Russia's rogue regime. And punish Russia's rogue regime to the fullest extent possible would come at an especially high price for Europe and the EU. You're being taken down, my friends. That's what's happening here. And Russia has won this war. Maybe not in terms which make sense to people with a five-minute attention span and absolutely no understanding of military strategy. But for those who don't fall in that category, they understand what's going on the ground. In prospect is a second Cold War with permanent NATO bases on Russia's borders. Well, we already have permanent NATO bases on Russia's borders. That's what's caused the problem. Okay, so you've got missing context, gaslighting. I suppose this would be... it's a lie. Yes, it is, I suppose. But hold on, it's gaslighting, and it's the propaganda payload. They're getting you set up because they know that you're dumb. And I'm not saying this particular journalist talks like that to his wife about the people that he writes for, but he does know this. And he has to assume the goldfish bowl phenomenon, that the people he's writing for are gaslit by and have no memory. And he's generally, unless people like me come along, he's generally right, isn't he? Massively increased defence spending and an accelerating nuclear arms race. See, again, this is missing context. Russia's nuclear doctrine at the moment is that they no first use. I think it was Trump tore that up. The Americans have reneged on every single agreement they had with the Russians, just over and over and over again. But none of that's included in here, of course. Unceasing cyber and information warfare, endemic energy shortages, rocketing living costs, and more French-style, Russian-backed right-wing populist extremism. Okay, I can't keep going through all of this, Tosh, but I will explain one thing. You have to understand that wars, external wars are, they are external wars, but they're more than that. This won't be explained to you because they expect you to be too stupid to understand it, but I'll tell you, and it's this. All wars are social engineering projects at home. All of them. They're social engineering projects at home. So, you have to understand that whereas a war will be described to you, usually falsely, in terms of externals, you have an enemy and this is happening and that's happening, or in this case, a proxy war. What it won't be explained to you is the war against you, because this is how it works. Anyway, who cares? In short, the dawn of a new age of instability. Thank you. I think we've discovered what we're really after here. Why on earth would politicians such as America's Joe Biden, poor Joe Biden, Germany's Olaf Scholz and France's Emmanuel Macron tolerate so fraught and dangerous a future? I can think of some very good reasons. Don't know if I was doing that or not. I can think of some very good reasons. Like they all belong to, are all subordinate to the same business plan. That would make sense. Anyway. By taking a more robust stand now, they might prevent much of it from materializing, but supposedly avoiding risks today, they ensure a much riskier tomorrow. All right, this is simulation of journalism, and what they're trying to do is to kind of, they're playing into the greedy and stupid kind of narrative that just irritates me beyond belief. Oh, good, we're nearly finished. Sending weapons and best wishes is not enough. Well done. That's a good one. I bet he's pleased with that sentence. If you've ever written anything, you should see what's going on here. Anyway, we've nearly finished, which is great. Conferring last week, Western leaders, they're not leaders, debated providing security guarantees for Ukraine after the war. This is kind of gaslighting, isn't it? They're presuming that Ukraine will exist after the war. All well and good, but this war is happening now. This war is happening now. Who will guarantee Ukraine's survival in the possibly decisive next few weeks? Who, if push comes to shove, will move beyond training missions and provide direct in-country military support? So this is what this is pushing for. His job, and this is why I despise these so-called journalists, because without the kind of, I can't really use the word intellectual cover, informational cover provided by these prostitutes, this war would be over already, and many of the 24,000 and counting Ukrainian young men who have been killed in this event would still be alive. But this specimen and the people who pay him and the people who control them, they don't care about any of that. They don't care about that. They can only do their job by assuming and ensuring that you don't know any context or have any real understanding of the facts, whilst at the same time presenting themselves as journalists. And so that's kind of why I'm doing this, because it matters. Anyway, let's finish up this piece of tosh. Let's get real. That's the last thing he's going to do, I assure you of that. For all its heroism and sacrifice, Ukraine may lose this fight. Well, we've actually got to the propaganda payload. Yeah, wait, lost it a long time ago. Dreadful though it sounds, Putin could win. I thought the Russians were bogged down. Are you bogged down, Russians?
Yes, comrade.
But are you also violent, brutal, immoral, and evil?
Yes, comrade.
Is that all you can say?
Yes, comrade.
All right. If the West so abandons its principles, I can assure you the West, its defining characteristic is that it has no principles. This is my entire point. That's what rules-based international order is. A complete lack of any sort of principles. And that's what's being set up in opposition with the law-based system of the United Nations. So that's really the tension that's being presented here. Kind of good and bad cop. I think that's what's happening. But I think also it's about taking you lot down. And the only way, because you're so degraded, if you are in the West, if you are a Westerner, you are immoral. The average medieval man would just stop and vomit in the street if he knew what goes on in your mind. He wouldn't be able to take it. He would melt down on the spot. Okay, a shock would be too great for him. So that's just the truth of it. And I know I grew up in the West. So, and I'm not saying it's hugely different in Russia. I'm just saying for moderns, when I say the West in this sense, I'm really talking about Western civilization, which has taken pretty much everywhere in the whole world now. It's not just Europe and America. I'm not just talking about those countries. So you are by definition, you have no principles by definition, other than more fab stuff for you. That's it. So when it talks about principles, this is really quite hilarious. Anyways, carry on. If the West so abandons its principles and values to let that happen, the long-term price for everyone will be a whole new world of pain. Yes, it will, won't it? And isn't that the point? So in a way, what they're doing is throwing out ground bait to prepare you, the great unwashed, for what's coming, which is a new world, a whole new world of pain. There you are. I hope you enjoyed that. And I think I'm going to just leave that there. And that's... before I forget. See, I'm supposed to promote this, and I don't suppose anyone's listening anymore, so it's too late. But you're supposed to like this thing in order to see if we can beat the... what do they call it? The algorithm. If we don't beat the algorithm, it's the new god, isn't it? The what's it, algorithm. I don't know how much longer I'm going to have to be able to sand this, because... for various reasons. And the other thing to do is to follow my Telegram channel if you want, because I sometimes post some stuff on that. There you are. That's it. That's all for now.